Welcome back, film fans. I hope you're all well. This is going to be a video that I've actually wanted to make since I started the channel. And the reason being is because I quickly decided, I wanted to get a few videos under my belt before I address this topic in particular. And that is, as you can tell from the title, that of reaction channels. Namely, I wanted to kind of address their appeal and then go on to talk about some of the issues or the problems that I have with them, and then conclude with why I essentially won't be doing a reaction channel or reacting to content in any time in the foreseeable future. Okay, and the reason why I've decided to make this now is kind of in the wake of my last video where I mentioned things regarding differences of opinion and integrity when it comes to running a YouTube channel, essentially. So before I get into all of that, like I say, if you haven't already subscribed and you've liked what I've spoken about so far on the channel, and you like the cut of my jib, I suppose, and you like this video, by all means, feel free to share your opinions in the comments below, like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. So, what is it about reaction channels that are so popular and appealing and successful? I think this goes back, I think a lot of it can be found in the roots of kind of the COVID pandemic. Because the COVID pandemic essentially prohibited to us the essential form of movie going, which was going to the cinema. Okay, and with going to the cinema, essentially what you're doing is a kind of collective communal experience that you're sharing reactions with people in real time with a bunch of strangers in the dark. Okay, and what happened with COVID, of course, is that stopped that through lockdowns and restrictions and so on and so forth, where we can no longer do that. So we kind of looked for a replacement, maybe not a replacement, but a kind of supplanting of that kind of communal movie-going experience, particularly among us film fans and cinephiles. And that took, I think, its form in reaction channels, because essentially what a reaction channel does, for those of you that I imagine all of us know what a reaction channel is. Essentially, it's when a content creator in the form of a YouTube channel reacts to suggestions on the behalf of their audience, normally in the form of could be comments or polls that they run, but normally it's through the run of sort of form of other subscription services such as Patreon, PayPal subscription services, which you can kind of then the audience determines what that person reacts to. And the most predominant form of that is like films and TV programs. Okay, so it fits the theme of this channel where we discuss films. And like I said, that really took off during COVID, and one can easily see why, because a lot of people were kind of missing that communal cinema going experience. And I think this ties into another aspect of what makes reaction channels so popular. And this is a bit of a kind of heavy philosophical concept or term, but it's what Robert Fowler called interpassivity, which is the idea of that you let someone else do the movie watching for you. So in the case of reaction channels, what you're getting in terms of the interpassive form is you watch someone else react to a movie, typically the first time, react to a movie in not real time because it's recorded, but you're watching them react to it in real time, and you're letting them watch the movie for the first time for you, because you can't obviously do that again. You can only watch a movie for the first time once. And I mean, how many of us have said, we talk to someone about a film, they say they've never seen it before, and you kind of say, oh, I envy you, I wish I could see that for the first time again. You kind of envy the fact that they haven't seen it. And that's the kind of function that reaction channels perform, essentially speaking, is the idea that someone's doing the movie watching for you. So you might actually not decide to watch X film again, but you actually watch someone else react to it. And I think in the wake of COVID, like a lot of our, like I say, cinema going practices were disrupted, and we created new habits of film consumption that we haven't still quite moved away from. Like a lot of people I think now still don't routinely go to the cinema, but they would have done before COVID. It's just because those new practices have become cemented. And I think that's why reaction channels remain popular after COVID, because otherwise they just would have died, I think. And I think it's rooted in this kind of, like I said, this interpassive pleasure in which you watch someone doing the movie watching for you. And you vicariously live through the fact that they're watching it for the first time. And these are, of course, these are valid pleasures and valid reasons. I mean, I will confess myself that I've watched plenty of stuff on reaction channels. I'm not saying, I don't want to claim to make a video and be a hypocrite here. So I have consumed a lot of reaction content, and I can see the pleasures in it for sure. And I'm glad that I have, because otherwise I wouldn't be in the position to make the observations that I would then want to make in regards to my criticisms of them. because you quickly know, or I quickly observed a few kind of tropes or phenomenon recurring. What I think are issues with reaction channels that, and I don't want to single anyone out with this, by the way, it's not any individual creator or reactor, but there is this, and a lot of people, by the way, a lot of people have real, just they despise reaction channels because they kind of seen as kind of like parasitical. It's like you're not really creating content, you're just, it almost like it's the laziest form of content, right? For a lot of people, it's just you're reacting to something, you don't even have to say much, and you get, like I said, they're very successful, so you get a lot of views, and you quickly cultivate an audience off the back of that. So a lot of people despise them. A lot of actual content creators despise them for that reason, because they're kind of the antithesis to what they do. But like I said, I don't want to single any one individual out. I think these are like structural problems that are inherent to reaction channels that I've observed. The first one kind of being that you quickly notice that the same kinds of films and the same groups of films are reacted to, right? So reactions kind of privilege the same kinds of films being reacted to over and over again amongst the distribution of reaction channels. Part of this is probably because of the vices of YouTube copyright, in which immediately that rules out certain kinds of films being reacted to. But I think there's other elements of that too, because it's not just that case, because people will try and react to popular films whether they're subject to copyright woes or not, right? For example, I started this channel reviewing and discussing Bruce Lee films. Now, I haven't gone out my way to exhaust this search, but I haven't seen any, at least popular reactor to my knowledge, react to Bruce Lee films. Now, you can make a case, well, why not? You know, he's a famous figure in cinema. He's one of the most popular, revered martial artists. They're kind of action films. Why aren't they reacted to? Is it because they're kind of seen as lower tier B movies in terms of their production quality? Is it the fact that a lot of them are foreign? And let's be honest, a lot of subtitled or foreign movies aren't reacted to typically, which is, I think, one of the problems. But none, like I say, that's just one example. And that's like a kind of, at least that's a popular culty kind of figure, and his films are as well. So, or maybe they'll just react to the most popular and then leave all the others. So they kind of, reaction channels also can be a lazy tick box exercise, shorthand. You'll react to Enter the Dragon, but you won't react to any of his other films, for example, maybe. I don't know. But and we see this with, like, for example, maybe horror films. You might react to the first film of the franchise, but you won't react to any of the others, for example. Although sometimes I think that might be the best rule of thumb. I think that's quite healthy, because horror franchises they're not the most reliable in terms of consistent quality, are they? But nonetheless, you get my point. And the reason why I have a problem with this is because I think it reinforces a kind of colonized or a normative idea of what cinema is or should be. Which, in what I mean by that, is it kind of creates an echo chamber of what is already popular. And so for me, I see that as kind of like antithetical to what my channel wants to do, which is sometimes discuss films that are seldom seen or talked about. And like I said, the problem with that is, I mean, here's a good test case, for example. How many films from the IMDb top 250 are reacted to? Plenty of them are. Maybe almost all of them. How many of them, though, I should say, how much of the list, how many issues of representation are there with IMDb's list? Loads, okay? And I'll probably make a separate video on the IMDb list at some point, because my issues with that list. But the IMDb, and this is, by the way, this is the thing with lists in general. Now, I love a good list to me. I think a lot of cinephiles do. But all lists, whether you're creating them or if they're the product of collective voting, they will convey an idea of what, at least it could be, what decent cinema is or should be, okay? They will inevitably do that, okay? Some might argue that's the purpose of making a list, okay? Basically the formation of canons. Now, the problem with this is we're seeing a very restrictive, narrow conception of what the cinematic canon is, I think, which means it's never getting challenged or expanded through reaction channels. And when reaction channels are replacing a certain kind of film viewing, or even a certain kind of film criticism, that's where I really have to take issues with it. Because all you're kind of doing is you're ratifying the pre-existing cultural value or the cultural tastes of the audience that's viewing said content. So it becomes almost like a, for lack of a better term, a kind of self-celebratory circle jerk, really, of the audience feeling good, having their tastes validated, but their tastes are never challenged. And for me, this is the opposite of great criticism. The best criticism, right? The best film criticism is that which kind of challenges challenges your preconceived notions of what film is or what constitutes great cinema, or even just the way you think about film, and tries to get you to engage with films differently. You know, my Into the Dragon review, some people really liked for this reason I'm about to explain, and a lot of people didn't like what I had to say about Into the Dragon. Okay, but nonetheless, the reasons that I expressed, I like to think were kind of maybe they were somewhat unique or idiosyncratic or different. Or let's put it this way: if someone walked away thinking about Into the Dragon slightly differently off the back of what I've said, and maybe it kind of challenged or confounded their expectations, not their expectations, but their views of the film that they had, then I feel like I've done my job. I feel very fulfilled and satisfied off the back of that, because to me, that's what great film discussion, productive film discussion is you start thinking about cinema and engaging with it in different ways. And so this, like I say, this echo chamber, this ratifying of audience tastes, I think is really quite problematic, in the sense that, like I say, you see the same films being reacted to over and over again, and not much else is brought to the table, because to do so would threaten the economic viability of the channel, right? Because you have to react to what's popular. What's popular? Well, it's what the audience likes. What does the audience like? Well, that's determined by a lot of things, but most of the time, how successful a film already is in the public eye. Those are some of the issues that have a reaction channels on that basis. But when it comes to integrity, I have two issues. And again, they're kind of fundamental, and they're kind of unconscious on the behalf of reactors. So it's not like their fault, or it's not something they're conscious of, or they consciously do on purpose, shall we say. And one is that it relies on the audience's trust to assume that the reactor themselves have barely seen any films. Okay. Now, the reason why I find this quite astonishing is because a lot of people that make reaction channels when it comes to film and television claim to love film and television. Let's just stick with film, for example. They claim to love cinema, yet they've curiously never seen any of the cinematic classics. Like I said, I just find that astonishing. And you get it, even like reactors, they'll have massive film collections in the background. It's like, well, what, have you never seen any of those films that you have in the background? Are they yours, or are they just like, what are they? Are they replicas? What are they? They're just fakes? Like, it's just, I sometimes have a very hard time. I find it quite spurious that people have never seen it. And we're not talking about obscure films here. We're talking about the populist classics. And again, what kinds of films are privileged on reaction channels? You don't see many silent films. You don't see many films pre-1970. You don't see many foreign movies being discussed. You see a few culty ones, and a couple off the beaten track. But again, it's a certain conception and idea of what cinema is, and what is the best cinema. Again, a lot of the types of films that get privileged are ones where the best reactions will occur. Either someone's scared, so that promotes certain kinds of genres, which promote strong reactions: melodramas, horrors, comedies, laughter, tears, scares, essentially. All ones that have shocking twists. Okay, and again, there's great films in all of those sections, but at the same time, it's like you're basically the best kinds of the films are the ones that give you the instantaneous reactions. And again, that's a certain kind of cinema, I think. Whereas, what about the kind of thoughtful, contemplative one, the ones that leave you thinking for days afterwards and have a massive effect on you? Well, you can't talk about that because you're reacting in the moment. So again, certain kinds of films, I think, the ones that have a real, and the ones that have a lingering impact are often the best, I think a lot of us would say, right? So there's that idea of integrity there, where it's like, we have to take people's word, what they've seen and what they've not seen. And a lot of time they haven't seen anything, apparently. But yet they have a great thirst for cinema. And the second issue of integrity, I think, is, have you ever seen a reactor react really negatively to a film? If you have, it's really rare. Okay, and I find it hard to believe that reactors love everything that they're recommended. But again, there's this unconscious pressure for them to, because if they don't, you know, they have to curry favour with their audiences. If they don't, they're going to massively maybe piss off a lot of their audience, the majority of whom have recommended them a specific film. And so if you don't like that film, then that's a potential issue. So how many times have we seen no negative criticism, or at least toned down criticism as the result of a reaction? You can't like everything. Odds dictate you just can't like everything. And so again, I find that slightly, I mean, I just find it hard to believe, or worse, disingenuous. Okay, and you might say, well, Sam, you're being harsh to reaction channels there, but how many times? Here's an example of reaction channels' innate kind of disingenuousness. Thumbnails. How many times have you seen reaction thumbnails and they're very over exaggerated, like whoa, you know, and you never see that reaction in the video itself. And then you've got to ask yourself and consider, if you don't see that reaction in the video, then how do we know? So it never happened and they never reacted that way. How do we know that what they're saying is what they're really thinking? Okay, we don't. And then you've got to ask yourself, well, does it really matter? Okay, because then you've got to ask yourself, are reaction channels even film criticism? Well, they're not, and they're not trying to be. Okay, they are reactions, I suppose you could say. But again, how do we know that how they're reacting and what they're saying is what they're really thinking? And then, like I say, if it doesn't matter, then why are they popular and why do we like them? And this goes back to what I think, which is that it's basically a selfish pleasure on the behalf of the audience. What I mean by that is the audience takes great satisfaction in just showing you a film that you haven't seen before. They don't actually care what you think about it necessarily. Be interested to know how many viewers stick around for the comments after a film as opposed to just watching the reaction. They just want to see you, like I say, vicariously relive the experience of the film in the moment whilst you're watching it. I think is the main appeal of reaction channels. And again, even the discussion afterwards is going to be limited by virtue of they've just reacted. They're reacting. They're still reacting and processing the film in the moment. Okay, and so these two issues of integrity to me, that's exactly why I won't be doing reactions in any time in the near future. Is because if you actually look at my channel name, Real Reflections, it's kind of the antithesis to reactions. Okay, what are reactions? They're spontaneous. They're immediate. They're emotive, right? What's reflection? Reflection is something that's analytical, considered. It's more, I suppose, more rational. I could say more analytical. Okay, and you know, you can't do that in the moment once you've immediately seen the film. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying reactors aren't capable of creating perceptive, saying perceptive things in the moment. They are, and some of them are way more skilled at me than doing that, for example. I wish I was better at doing that. But what I'm saying is I'd rather see a film and then sit on it and think about it for 2 or 3 days and then give an opinion about it, because I just feel like I'm doing the film more justice having done that. And how many times have we actually changed our opinions in 2 or 3 days afterwards? Okay, I certainly know I have. So in the moment isn't necessarily the most thoughtful or reliable way of getting someone's opinion on a film anyway. And so, that, like I said, that's a major reason. And the other major reason, of course, is like a lot of the populist classics I'm not saying I've seen every film ever, of course I'm not, but like a lot of the populist classics, the main ones that are reacted to on channels that get a lot of traction, I've kind of seen already. So I don't want to be disingenuous and claim that I haven't, So those are the integrity issues that dictate me not doing reactions anytime in the near future going forward for this channel. Like I say, I want to talk about films sometimes that are a bit off the beaten track, on the periphery, seldom seen, and actually give thoughtful, considered, reflective criticism on them, as opposed to just being in the moment. I think also as well, like discuss like reactions privileged films being seen as entertainment. I mean, if you can't, and this is why art films are never seldom featured on reaction channels. This is because art films are very hard to react to in the moment, because sometimes there might not be a lot going on. Okay, and you have to reflect on those films and let them sit with you. And again, so how reaction channels fundamentally are, I mean, it's again fundamentally certain films get excluded from the discussion, which again reinforces a certain notion of what cinema is popular and in the public eye. And because reaction channels are a public form of consumption, because some people might say, "What are you talking, Sam? What's the problem with that? You know, what's different to it showing it to your mates?" Well, the difference between showing it to your mates is that's a private form of consumption, whereas on YouTube, something that's getting a lot of views, that's a public form of consumption. Surely you want to introduce people to films that not only they might not have seen, but like loads of people might not have seen either, and widen and expand and challenge people's film tastes and take them down different avenues. Look, to me, one of the main pleasures as I get older as a cinephile is precisely that. It's seeing films that I've never heard of or seen before, okay? Because that gets rarer as you get older if you are a cinephile, or seeing films that absolutely challenge and confound my expectations that I wouldn't think I'd like, but then I turn out liking. Those are the main pleasures of being a cinephile when you're older, is making these new discoveries, as it were. So those are my main, like I say, issues and thoughts on reaction channels. Again, I can see completely valid, legitimate reasons as to why they're popular. I really see it, and I'm not as harsh on them as, say, people that just absolutely trash them and say they are kind of like almost like the reality TV almost of YouTube in terms of content creation. Like I say, I think they have their place and they have their pleasures, but again, they just aren't for me in terms of my aims and objectives, what I want this channel to be, which is of course facilitate discussion, with fellow cinephiles, I hope, and kind of form a community off the back of that, which would be great. That'd be awesome if we could do that. So anyway, I've rambled on long enough. You guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments, or you can react in the comments if you wish. And if you like what I've said, if you like my content, subscribe. Also click the bell icon as well. I never say that, click the bell icon so you can, because I think, maybe everyone that's subscribed is not getting the notifications to my new videos that are coming through. At the moment, I'm doing like 3 or 4 a week. So I'm pumping out a lot more content for you guys. But yeah, I'll let you guys go now. As always, have a good one, take care, and I will see you on the next one. I hope you enjoyed the vid.